There comes a moment in your life when you realize something painful. Nobody is coming to save you. Not because nobody cares about you, but because there are certain roads you were born to walk alone. And strangely enough, those are often the roads that lead you to the person you are always capable of becoming. You may be in that season right now. You are working quietly, trying again quietly, waking up when nobody notices, building something nobody understands. You look around and see other people being celebrated while you are still struggling in silence. And somewhere deep inside, a question begins to whisper. When will they finally notice me? But perhaps that is the wrong question. Perhaps the real question is, who will I become if they never notice me? Because there is a version of you that is still waiting for applause before taking another step. Still waiting for someone to recognize your effort. Still waiting for a person to realize what they lost. Still waiting for the world to confirm that you are worthy. And that version of you must eventually disappear. Not through bitterness, not through revenge, but through transformation. There is a strange power in becoming comfortable with walking alone. At first, loneliness feels like punishment. You wonder why people stopped calling, why your friends moved in different directions, why someone you loved became distant, why the people you thought would stand beside you suddenly became spectators. You take their silence personally. You wonder if something is wrong with you. But sometimes silence is not rejection. Sometimes silence is redirection. Sometimes life removes the noise because you have spent too long listening to everybody except yourself. And when the noise disappears, you finally hear something you have been avoiding for years, your own voice. It is a quiet voice. It does not shout. It does not demand attention. It simply asks, what are you going to do with your life now? That question can change everything. Because the person who learns to move without applause becomes incredibly difficult to stop. Think about how most people live. They need somebody watching. They need somebody encouraging them. They need somebody telling them they are doing well. If nobody notices their effort, they begin to question the effort itself. They exercise for compliments. They work for recognition. They become successful so certain people will regret underestimating them. They improve themselves because they want someone from their past to look back and say, I should have appreciated them. But there is a problem with that kind of motivation. You are still giving your power away. If your happiness depends on someone noticing you, that person still controls you. If your confidence depends on someone choosing you, they still control you. If your ambition depends on proving somebody wrong, they still live in your mind, rent-free. You may call it motivation, but psychologically, it is still attachment. Real strength begins when you can say, I will do this, even if nobody applauds. I will become better, even if nobody notices. I will keep going, even if the people I wanted beside me never return. That is when your life begins to belong to you, and this is where walking alone becomes something completely different. It is no longer loneliness, it becomes training. Every lonely season teaches you something that crowded seasons cannot teach you. When everyone is around, you can avoid yourself. When nobody is around, you cannot. You begin noticing the thoughts you normally drown out. You begin recognizing the fears hidden underneath your ambition. You begin seeing how much of your identity was built around being accepted. You discover that sometimes you were not pursuing your dream. You were pursuing validation. Sometimes you were not missing the person. You were missing how that person made you feel about yourself. Sometimes you were not angry because they left. You were angry because their leaving forced you to confront the belief that you were replaceable. And that realization hurts. But pain is not always an enemy. Sometimes pain is information. It shows you where you are still dependent. It reveals where your self-worth has been outsourced. It exposes the places inside you that still need healing. You see, emotional maturity is not becoming a person who never feels pain. It is becoming a person who no longer lets pain make every decision. You can miss someone and still move forward. You can love someone and still release them. You can feel lonely and still refuse to return to what destroyed your peace. You can care deeply without abandoning yourself. That is strength. And there is something else you must understand. People often notice transformation only after it becomes visible. They rarely see the thousands of invisible decisions that created it. They don't see the mornings when you wanted to quit. They don't see the nights when you questioned everything. They don't see the opportunities you rejected because you were trying to become disciplined. They don't see the private battles. They see the result. They see the confidence. They see the discipline. They see the calmness. They see the person who no longer needs to explain himself. And suddenly, they become curious. Something changed. Of course something changed. You did. But here's the secret. You cannot build your transformation around the moment they notice. Because if you spend your journey imagining their reaction, you are still emotionally standing in the same place. You are still looking backward. And life is asking you to look forward. There is a season where you must stop explaining yourself. Stop telling people what you are going to do. Stop announcing every goal. Stop asking everyone whether they believe in you. Just work. Quietly. Let your habits speak. Let your consistency speak. Let your character speak. Let time speak. There is tremendous psychological power in becoming less available for distraction. Not cold. Not arrogant. Not cruel. Just focused. You don't have to become heartless to become disciplined. You don't have to hate people to stop chasing them. You don't have to prove your worth by becoming unreachable. You simply have to stop abandoning yourself every time somebody else walks away. Because some people leave, and the first thing you do is chase them. You send another message. You explain yourself again. You ask what happened. You replay every conversation. You search for hidden meanings. You wonder whether they still think about you. And beneath all those questions is often one deeper question. Was I enough? Listen carefully. Someone's inability to recognize your value is not proof that you have no value. A closed door is not a measurement of your worth. A rejection is not a definition. A goodbye is not a verdict. Sometimes people cannot meet you where you are going because they are committed to staying where they are. And that does not make either person evil. It simply means the road divided. You have to learn to respect that. Because maturity is knowing that not every ending requires an enemy. Some endings require acceptance. Some require forgiveness. And some require forgiveness. And some require nothing except your willingness to keep walking. There is a beautiful kind of silence that comes after you stop chasing. At first, it feels terrifying. You want to reach out. You want to explain. You want to know whether they miss you. But then something happens. A day passes, then another. And slowly, your attention returns to your own life. You start sleeping better. You start thinking more clearly. You start noticing opportunities you were too emotionally distracted to see. You start taking care of yourself. You start building again. And one morning, you realize you haven't checked whether they noticed you. That is freedom. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped needing their attention to continue living. This is what people misunderstand about emotional detachment. Detachment is not indifference. It is the ability to love without losing yourself. It is the ability to care without controlling. It is the ability to let someone go without turning their departure into a permanent wound. And once you learn that, your entire relationship with people changes. You stop begging. You stop forcing. You stop manipulating. You stop trying to convince someone to value you. You become willing to walk away from anything that requires you to repeatedly betray your own dignity. And that is when your presence begins to change. Because confidence is not always loud. Sometimes confidence looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like not responding. Sometimes it looks like leaving the room without making an announcement. Sometimes it looks like sitting alone and deciding that your future is more important than your temporary feelings. That is a powerful decision. Because feelings are real, but feelings are not always instructions. You can feel like quitting and still continue. You can feel afraid and still act. You can feel lonely and still build. You can feel rejected and still believe in yourself. You can feel uncertain and still take the next step. That is discipline. And discipline will carry you into places motivation never could. There will be days when you do not feel inspired. There will be mornings when the dream feels foolish. There will be evenings when you wonder whether all this effort is worth it. Those are the days that matter. Anybody can work when the results are coming. Anybody can stay committed when people are cheering. Anybody can believe when everything is going well. But what do you do when nobody is watching? That is where character is built. Your private behavior eventually becomes your public identity. The person you become when nobody is looking is the person the world eventually sees. So don't waste your lonely season. Use it. Read, think, learn, work, exercise, create, pray, reflect, build something, fix something, become someone you respect. And don't measure progress only by money or followers or attention. Measure it by how quickly you recover. Measure it by how much less you need approval. Measure it by how calmly you handle rejection. Measure it by whether you keep promises to yourself. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, your self-respect grows. And every time you repeatedly break one, something inside you weakens. You tell yourself, tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next month. And eventually, you have trained yourself not to trust your own word. Reverse that. Start small. Tell yourself you will wake up at a certain time. Wake up. Tell yourself you will work for 1 hour. Work. Tell yourself you will finish something. Finish it. Not because the world cares about that 1 hour, but because you are rebuilding trust with yourself. And once you trust yourself, loneliness becomes less frightening. You realize you are not actually alone. You have yourself. You have your mind. You have your capacity to learn. You have your ability to change. You have another morning. You have another decision. You have another opportunity to become stronger. Never underestimate what can happen when a person becomes deeply committed to becoming better. The world may ignore you for a while. Let it. The world may underestimate you. Let it. Some people may laugh. Let them. Some may leave. Let them leave. Your responsibility is not to force the world to recognize you. Your responsibility is to become so grounded in your own purpose that recognition becomes secondary. There is a difference between being unseen and being unworthy. You may simply be early. You may be building something that takes years. You may be developing qualities that cannot be displayed immediately. Roots grow in darkness. A seed spends a long time underground before anybody sees a tree. And nobody stands over the soil shouting, "Why aren't you a tree yet?" They understand that growth has a process. Why don't you give yourself the same patience? You look at somebody else's chapter 20 and compare it with your chapter 3. Then you call yourself behind. Behind what? Behind whose schedule? Life is not a race where everybody reaches the same destination on the same day. Your journey has its own timing. Your job is to keep moving. And sometimes walking alone is necessary because crowds have expectations. When you walk alone, you can hear your own thoughts. You can change direction. You can experiment. You can fail privately. You can become someone different without asking permission. That is freedom. But there is a deeper reason people fear walking alone. It forces them to confront the possibility that they may have been living for other people. They fear discovering that their goals were inherited. Their definition of success came from somebody else. Their relationships were chosen from fear. Their lifestyle was built around impressing people they didn't even like. And one day, when the noise disappears, they ask, "What do I actually want?" That question can be frightening. But answer it. Not what will impress people. Not what will make someone jealous. Not what will make your family proud. Not what will make your family proud. Your former partner regret leaving. What do you want? What kind of person do you want to become? What kind of life would make you respect yourself even if nobody knew about it? That is the beginning of a meaningful life. And if someone from your past eventually notices your transformation, fine. If they don't, fine. Because the purpose was never to make them notice. The purpose was to become someone you no longer abandon. There is an incredible psychological shift that happens when you stop trying to be chosen. You begin choosing. You choose your environment. You choose your habits. You choose your relationships. You choose what deserves your attention. You choose where your energy goes. And suddenly, your life feels less like something happening to you and more like something you are deliberately creating. That is personal power, not control over others, control over yourself. And remember this, the loudest person in the room is not necessarily the strongest. Sometimes the strongest person is the one who has nothing to prove. They don't need to tell you how hard they work. You can see it. They don't need to announce their discipline. Their life demonstrates it. They don't need to convince you of their worth. They know it. That kind of confidence is built slowly, usually in solitude, usually after disappointment, usually after somebody you trusted teaches you that you cannot build your identity around another human being. Maybe that was the lesson. Maybe the person who left was not sent into your life to stay forever. Maybe they were sent to expose something you needed to heal. Maybe the rejection forced you to develop. Maybe the loneliness forced you to become independent. Maybe the silence forced you to listen. Maybe losing them forced you to find yourself. And maybe one day you will look back and realize that what felt like abandonment was actually the beginning of your awakening. This does not mean you should romanticize pain. Pain is painful. Loss is loss. Give yourself permission to grieve. If you loved someone, let yourself admit that you loved them. If you are disappointed, admit it. If you are tired, admit it. Healing does not begin by pretending you are unaffected. It begins when you become honest. But after honesty comes responsibility. You cannot spend your entire life explaining why you are wounded. At some point, you have to ask what you are going to build with the pieces. Your past may explain you. It does not have to control you. Your abandonment may explain your fear. It does not have to dictate your future. Your rejection may explain your insecurity. It does not have to become your identity. You are allowed to become different. And becoming different often requires doing something your old self would never do. Walking away. Staying quiet. Saying no. Starting again. Working alone. Waiting. Being patient. Choosing long-term peace over short-term attention. That is how a person changes. Not in one dramatic moment, but through hundreds of quiet decisions nobody sees. One morning you choose discipline. One morning you choose discipline. One evening you choose patience. One day you refuse to chase. Another day you forgive. Another day you work when you don't feel like working. And eventually, those choices become your character. Then your character becomes your destiny. That is why you must be careful about what you repeatedly do. You're always becoming somebody. The question is whether you are becoming somebody you respect. So if you are walking alone right now, don't automatically assume something has gone wrong. Maybe this is your preparation season. Maybe life is giving you distance because you need clarity. Maybe the people around you are changing because you are changing. Maybe your old identity no longer fits the future you are building. That transition can feel empty. But emptiness is sometimes simply space waiting to be filled with something better. Do not rush to fill it with another person. Do not rush to fill it with another distraction. Sit with yourself. Learn yourself. Build yourself. There's something powerful about becoming your own safe place. When you can sit alone without feeling abandoned, you become harder to manipulate. When you can be alone without becoming desperate, you choose relationships from abundance rather than fear. You don't stay because you're afraid nobody else will come. You stay because the relationship is healthy. You don't chase because you're afraid of being forgotten. You connect because there is genuine value. That is emotional maturity. And yes, sometimes the person you wanted will notice you after you stop chasing. Sometimes they will come back. Sometimes they will ask what happened. Sometimes they will suddenly become interested when you become less available. But be careful. Attention is not always love. Someone missing your presence is not necessarily evidence that they are ready to value it. People can miss access to you without understanding your worth. People can miss your attention without being prepared to give you healthy love. So don't let someone's return erase everything you learned while they were gone. Ask different questions. Not, do they want me? Ask, is this healthy for me? Not, do they miss me? Ask, can we build something better? Not, why did they come back? Ask, have we both changed? That is the difference between emotional hunger and emotional wisdom. And sometimes the strongest response to someone's return is not anger. It is peace. You can appreciate what existed without reopening what had to end. You can wish someone well without inviting them back into your life. You can forgive without forgetting the lesson. You can love without returning. That is freedom. And perhaps that is what you have been looking for all along. Not attention, not revenge, not validation. Freedom. Freedom from needing everybody to understand you. Freedom from needing everybody to approve. Freedom from needing the past to apologize before you move forward. Freedom from needing somebody else to recognize what you already know about yourself. Because when you finally recognize yourself, something extraordinary happens. You stop waiting for the world to introduce you to your own potential. You begin meeting it yourself, day after day, quietly, patiently, without applause. And then, eventually, people may notice. They may notice that you don't react the way you used to. They may notice that you are calmer. They may notice that you have boundaries. They may notice that your energy feels different. They may notice that you stopped explaining. They may notice that you are building something. They may wonder what happened, and you may smile. Because you will know. Nothing happened overnight. You simply stopped abandoning yourself. You walked through the season nobody saw. You survived the silence. You learned to carry your own heart. You turned pain into wisdom. We turn loneliness into discipline. You turn rejection into direction. You turn uncertainty into faith, and you kept walking. That is the part nobody can take from you. Not the money, not the applause, not the followers, not the attention. The transformation belongs to you. So walk when nobody understands. Walk when nobody claps. Walk when the people you expected beside you choose another road. Walk when your progress feels invisible. Walk when you are afraid. Walk when you are tired. Walk slowly if you must, but keep walking because the road is doing something to you. It is strengthening your legs. It is strengthening your mind. It is strengthening your mind. It is strengthening your patience. It is strengthening your character. And one day you will look behind you and realize that the distance you traveled was not just physical. You became someone else along the way. Someone calmer, someone wiser, someone more disciplined, someone who no longer begs to be chosen, someone who no longer needs to be noticed before believing in himself, someone who understands that the greatest audience you can ever have is your own conscience. And when you can look at yourself honestly and say, I did not quit on me, you have already won something much bigger than attention. You have won yourself. So if nobody notices you today, continue. If nobody understands you today, continue. If nobody believes in you today, continue. Not because you need to prove them wrong, but because you owe yourself the opportunity to discover what you are capable of becoming. Let them notice later. Let success speak later. Let the results arrive later. Your job today is simple. Take the next step, then another, then another. Build in silence, heal in silence, grow in silence, grow in silence. And when the time comes, you will not need to announce that you have changed. Your life will say it for you. There is a season for being seen, and there is a season for becoming. Do not confuse the two. If you're in the season of becoming, embrace it, protect it, respect it, use it. Because some of the most important chapters of your life will be written when nobody is watching. And perhaps years from now, you will look back at this lonely version of yourself with gratitude. You will remember the nights you thought you were forgotten, the mornings you almost gave up, the people who walked away, the doors that closed, the silence that felt unbearable, and you will finally understand they were not the end of your story. They were the environment in which your next self was being built. So keep walking, not desperately, not angrily, not to make anyone regret losing you. Walk because your future is calling. Walk because your peace matters. Walk because your peace matters. Walk because your purpose is bigger than temporary attention. Walk because somewhere ahead of you is a version of yourself who will be grateful that you refused to stop. And when you finally reach that place, you may discover something beautiful. You were never really walking toward them. You were walking toward yourself. And that is why you had to walk alone. Because some destinations cannot be reached while carrying everybody else's expectations. Some transformations require solitude. Some awakenings require silence. Some victories require years when nobody knows your name. So let them sleep. Let them overlook you. Let them underestimate you. Let them misunderstand you. You do not need to interrupt their opinion. You have work to do. Your life is waiting. Your future is waiting. And perhaps the most important person waiting for you is the person you could become if you simply refuse to quit today. Take another step, then another, and keep going. One day they may notice, but by then you may no longer need them to. And that is when you will know you have truly become free. Thank you for spending these moments with me. If these words found something inside you that you could not explain, carry that feeling with you today. Do not rush past it. Let it remind you that your quiet season still has meaning. Your unseen work still has value, and your story is still being written. Keep walking. Keep becoming. And when the world finally turns around to see who you became, make sure the person looking back at you is someone you are proud to be. Until we meet again, protect your peace, honor your journey, and never forget the road you walk alone today may be the very road that introduces you to the strongest version of yourself.